Hi, everybody. Before I get started, I just want to mention two things. One is the series I'll be doing in the next 4 weeks is one of my favorite series. I had the privilege and the honor of writing my first book about this series. It's on relationships, the gifts of life. I want to start off by doing a reading from the Woman's Meditation book, Each Day a New Beginning, and I picked a reading for July 28th. The beauty of loving someone is the feeling of wholeness that I experience, the need for that individual in my life, the I'm part of you and you're part of me, feeling that connects two people and makes them necessary to each other. All that is asked of us by our Creator is that we love one another. Where love doesn't flow easily, perhaps we can just decide not to hurt someone. If we each avoided hurting all people just for one day, lives would be transformed. We'd see the world with a fresh perspective. The more we love others, any others, the deeper our love will grow for all others. Loving lifts our hearts and lightens our burdens. Everyday's tribulations can become triumphs when we carry love in our hearts. Love fills us up, and the more we share it, the fuller we become. We are connected, each of us to one another, all of us together. Our contributions to the whole are necessary. Its completion is made perfect by our presence. As I pass a friend today, I'll be grateful for their contribution to my wholeness too. I wanted to read that because I love the readings in the Woman's Meditation book between July 28th and August 3rd. They're all readings based on relationships, so I do highly recommend them. But I want to kind of share a story with you before I get into today's lecture. You know, I had the honor and the privilege way back in 1986 of writing my first book. But I got to tell you the story about how it came about and how this whole entire lecture came about. In 1936, no, I was 36, yeah, sure. I wasn't even alive then. 1986, I was giving talks over at Malvern Institute in Philadelphia. And I was giving talks on relationships. After one of my talks, I sat down with a lady in the cafeteria. Her name was Annie. I sat down with her, having a cup of coffee. And for some reason, God works in mysterious ways. I said to Annie, I said, you know, someday I'm going to ask somebody to take my lectures and basically retype them and then bring in a manuscript that can use it for my book.
People to learn.
Annie looked at me and said, without batting an eyelash, I did it already, Vince. So the following week, she came in and gave you the foundation manuscript for my first book. A friend of mine at the Philadelphia Inquirer edited it, put it together. I worked with him, and the book was published. You know, it's kind of a powerful thing to be able to see how God works, how things work in powerful ways. So what I want to do over the next 4 weeks is share with you the things I wrote in that book and the concepts. I'll probably change a few things because I have the habit of not sticking to script all the time, and I come up with new things and work in new directions, but the foundation is still there. So I got to tell you something, though, and I apologize ahead of time. I have to depress you a little bit today. Hope you don't mind. I'm sure Joy doesn't mind, but I have to depress you a little bit today. The lecture today is about how do I describe and how do I identify unhealthy relationships. Then I'll spend a week on how to develop a healthy relationship with myself as a person. Then we'll talk about developing healthy relationships with others. Then in the final week, we'll talk about relationships and sexuality. I want to bring this out because I think it's really important for us to look at the foundations of our relationships. Believe it or not, Most of us are develop relationship patterns in the early years of our life. For example, I've said this before to you. For a little boy when he's growing up, mommy is supposed to be the first love of his life and supposed to be his role model for relationships. For a little girl, it's supposed to be daddy. And basically, mommy's also supposed to be the role model for a female growing up, and daddy's supposed to be the role model for a male. Now, these things are just theories, but in reality, so many of us were never taught good, healthy relationships. So what I do when I talk about unhealthy relationships, I talk about 3 different classifications of unhealthy relationships. I also share some of this in my codependency series. We refer to it as the isolation relationship or the hostage-taking relationship. The second area is the fantasy relationship or the make-believe relationship. And the third area is the caretaker relationship. Now, the isolation relationship, we talk about that, are normally people that grew up in homes where never got a lot of love. Homes that were empty and lonely, and very many times, excuse me, coming out of homes where there were issues of major trauma. These are kids that are very empty and very lonely as they grow up. So as an adult, I still have feelings of emptiness, feelings of loneliness. So as a result, then, I keep looking for something to fill the void. See, try to remember something. When you don't have a real good, healthy relationship with yourself, you have like a void inside of you. So look for something on the outside to literally fill that void. And for many of us, we're looking for a parent figure, something that we never experienced. And so as a result, I have a tendency then, if somebody comes along and treats me nice, I want to take that sucker hostage. You know, we have a joke. It's not a joke. You know, it's a mantra. In the addiction world, we always say, if you truly love someone, let them go. If they're supposed to come back, they'll come back. But see, codependents and addicts don't believe in that. Their philosophy is, if you truly love someone, follow them and stalk them. If they try to get away, capture them. See, it's this concept deep down inside. I'm empty, I'm lonely, and as a result, I want you to fill my void. So I can become very possessive, very controlling, very manipulative in a relationship. Because I have this tremendous fear inside of me. Fear of rejection and fear of abandonment. Because literally I'll look at you almost as an object or an addiction, or literally, I want you to always be part of my life. And I'm always scared, I'm afraid, a lot of fear. I am scared and I'm afraid that you're going to leave. So what do? I have to make sure that you don't. What's so scary about isolation too is I have a tendency to want to isolate to one area. It's no different than an addiction. I can make a person into my drug. And they are my life, my everything, and my all. But in reality, it means I don't exist. And the scary part about it is, even in these types of relationships, as I'll share later on, if for some reason there's a breakup, I look for somebody to fill the void. But usually I can't live too long without a relationship. And you'll find out towards the end of this lecture, the foundation is that so many of us never took the time to truly build a healthy relationship with ourselves as a person. And I'll share with this later on too. It is the only relationship that we can have on the face of this earth. Because if I truly learn to love me, and I truly learn to connect to me, then I will attract into my life the people I'm supposed to share it with. Everything works on the law of attraction. The thing I understand very deeply today is scary. In isolation, what happens is I can isolate to one individual, and my life becomes centered around that. The second area is called fantasy, the fantasy-based relationship. And these are scary. These are individuals that grew up in homes where they've experienced either sexual abuse, major trauma issues, homes where you basically never wanted to take anybody home because you were embarrassed by your family system. So at a very, very early age, you learn how to make up stories. It's almost a defense mechanism. See, I don't want anybody to know about my family. I don't want them to know about my parents. So what do? I go into the world of fantasy and I create what I want to be my parent. I create a fantasy. Here's the powerful thing about fantasy. Once you say it and you like it, and the more you say it, the more you believe it. Here's the hardest thing in dealing with a fantasy relationship. Because deep down inside, even though what you're thinking about and feeling isn't real, it becomes real for us because we say it over and over and over again. And so I can live in a fantasy world. And we've learned a long time ago that lies are powerful, even though I don't consider this a lie. See, fantasizers are people that live in this fantasy world. Now, you might say to them, but they're telling lies. What they're saying is not real. They'll look you straight in the eye and say, yes, it is. See, because deep down inside, they can't separate what's going on inside of them. It's a powerful process of addiction. So what happens very many times with fantasizers, when it comes to addiction, they're scared to get too close to anyone. They're scared of you finding out who I really am. So what do? I can have a fantasy relationship in my head. I can create whatever I want to create and literally begin to believe it. I'll share kind of an example on the story with you, and it's one that's very sad, but also very true. A particular individual, this lady, was the administrative secretary for a very interesting gentleman that was the owner of a major company. Now, unfortunately, over a period of time, she's very lonely and very empty, and she fell in love with this gentleman. Now, here's the problem, though. He had no idea at all she had these feelings. He was married, he had a family, but fantasizers have a beautiful way, and it's a sad way, of creating their own world. So how she handled this was, from 9 to 5 every day, he belonged to me. What he does after 5 o'clock, I don't want to know. It's almost like his wife then becomes the other woman he's having an affair with. All this craziness goes on inside of your head, but it all goes back to the fact that I never learned the foundations of what I realized myself really is all about. So as a result then, everything works out fine because he doesn't know anything about this. I don't have to tell him, but I can live in my fantasy world. Then something always happens. In this case, the wife had the audacity one day of actually surprising her husband and showing up to take him out to lunch at lunchtime. Immediately, his secretary, administrative secretary, became very angry because now the other woman is there and he's paying attention to her. So he's already cheating on her, even though he's not cheating. He has no idea what's going on. Two of them go to lunch, and during lunch, she goes off the deep end and tears and rips the office apart. Just goes crazy and ends up in a psychiatric hospital. I use this as an example because it's one I've worked with in my life. It's a true story. What's scary about it is, and I thank God with a lot of gratitude, that the individual did get into therapy, a lot of time, a lot of help, and is doing very well today, thank God. But the scary thing about this, when you look at these types of situations, this can be between, two men, two women, doesn't make any difference. The sexual orientation doesn't make a difference. What I'm trying to bring out is fantasy can be so scary because I have a fear of commitment. I don't mind craziness and insanity because I'm used to it. The other part of fantasizing very many times is clandestine relationships. I want to be involved with somebody who's not available for relationships. So I can sneak, I can do all kinds of crazy stuff. But see, you have to understand, when you're going through insanity in your childhood, it's almost like I get high on the rush, the high, the craziness, the insanity of all this. It becomes something basically that I have to make sure it's a situation where they're never going to say that word, that curse word, commitment. As soon as somebody wants to they talk about commitment, I'm out the door and down the street. Because see, I want to live in my world. I'm scared to death because what does commitment mean to me? It means the example I had when I was a child. It means more craziness and more insanity. And all this stems from the fact that when you don't have a healthy sense of self, that basically you migrate in these different directions. The third area is called caretaking. And one of the scariest of all. It's called caretakers are usually the goody two-shoes children, the nice guys and gals. The kids who at a very, very, very early age were given a tremendous amount of responsibility. These are the kids that were told at an early age they had to perform, they had to function, they had to get things done, they had to take care of the family. It's amazing sometimes the pressure and stuff we can put on a 7, 8-year, 9-year-old child and expect them to be an adult. So as a result, these are the kids that grow up too fast. These are the kids that can become very scary in very many different ways. And so as a result, it literally comes down to the fact that they basically thrive on caring for people. They don't have a good sense of role model for relationships because basically they've been taught their whole entire life the importance of just simply caring for people, taking care of people. And the scary thing about it is they literally get caught up in it. Now I'll show you what I mean. Because the caretakers are used to taking care of people and they don't realize it, but they are also very, 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 very angry people. See, when your childhood's been stripped away from you, you develop a tremendous amount of anger, but it's called repressed anger. Again, I can relate to this in my own life because at a very early age, my mother and my family decided I was going to be the family priest. and I was put into the seminary when I was 14 years old. I was given a tremendous amount of responsibility, and the whole entire family elevated me to a pedestal where I would be the family clergyman. The expectations and stuff that was put on me. So as a result, I didn't realize this until years and years later in therapy. I was very angry and very frustrated. But I'm a good caretaker. I smile. If you ask me how I am, I always say to you, I'm fine. Everything's okay. But I keep doing, and doing. What's scary about this when it comes to relationships, most caretakers love to be involved in relationships with sickies. The sicker, the better. See, I want to save them. I want to rescue them. When I was in the priesthood, believe it or not, I went over $60,000 in debt from running around the countryside trying to save addicts. Paying bills for them, doing everything. I got manipulated and used so much it was unbelievable. But I had this drive inside of me to always want to fix people, to be responsible, to always want to be able to take care of them. I didn't realize it was slowly destroying me. With the grace of God, I'm grateful. I had a nervous breakdown. I'm grateful I had to deal with addiction, different things in my life. But I realize today what caretaking can do to you. And that control mechanism is the most powerful thing in the world. Because literally, I'm going to fix you, whether you want to be fixed or not. I remember a lady coming in to see me, and she said, Vince, I'm getting ready to get married. And I really am marrying this wonderful man. I really like him. I said, well, tell me about him. Well, he has some bad habits. Like he's old-fashioned. He does things his way, but don't worry. Once we get married, I'll straighten him out. He has a tendency to snore a lot too, but that's all right. I'll straighten that out too. I'm listening to her talk to me, and I said, wait a minute. You're going to marry this guy, and then you're going to straighten out all of his problems, all of his idiosyncrasies, everything about him. I said, good luck. It's not going to happen. But see, she really felt deep down inside of herself she could handle it. Another one came to see me, and she said to me, I met this wonderful man. I moved in with him. We have a nice relationship, but he has some strange behaviors. I said, okay. Well, I can't understand why in our bedroom there's a photograph of him and his first wife on the wall. I said, that's strange. But I said, he also noticed something else. His first wife looks a lot like me. Again, what's he doing? Substituting. See, caretakers are control freaks. They want to control. They want to fix. But there's some rules caretakers have. Here's the hardest part. Don't you dare get better. So I'm going to bitch about you, gripe about you, and complain about you all day long. The funniest of all my stories I ever told. I used to visit my aunt when she was alive. My aunt lived in a wheelchair over in Pennsauken. When I go visit her and spend time with her, I was a priest at the time, the neighbor next door would come over to have tea with us. Older Italian lady. She would come in and sit down with us, and she would do nothing but bitch, gripe, and complain about her husband, the bum. I've been living with this bum for 44 years. He's a bum. He's no good. He's rotten. He does nothing. I do the cooking. I do the cleaning. I do everything. Oh my God, she went on and on and on. Finally, one day I got fed up listening to it because I heard the story plenty of times. So I said to her, why do you stay with him? She literally almost bit my head off and said to me, because I love him? In my mind, I said, if that poor man ever tried to do anything, she'd kill him. She would drive him nuts. But see, she has this need inside of her to take care of someone and then to complain about what she has to do. And we see this a lot of times with teachers, therapists, we see nurses, people that are in the working profession all the time, and they're giving and giving and giving in relationship, but they give too much. So the hardest thing we have to learn is to be able to have a sense of responsibility to ourselves. See, I share all this with you because I don't want to depress you too much, but I share it with you because the bottom line is very simple and very basic. The most important relationship you can have on the face of this earth is the one that you have with yourself. I never truly understood this until when I was in the hospital with a nervous breakdown and the doctor said something to me, which I will never forget. He said to me, he said, Vince, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll be dead by the time you're 40 years old. He says, all you're doing is running around like a crazy person. He said, but you're filled with a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. You get frustrated because people won't do what you tell them to do. He said, you got to stop it. And then he said something to me. He said, you don't realize this. I know you're a priest, but you don't realize this. You are spiritually dead. You have no idea who you are. You have no sense of yourself at all. And today, when he told me that, I wasn't very happy. In fact, I was upset at the guy. How could I be spiritually dead and be a priest? And he finally said something to me. He said, I know you don't understand it, but one day you will. But unfortunately, you're going to have to burn out first. And that's the sad part. Because so many times, it's almost like I want things to be the way I want them to be. I know what's good for you. But see, I can't take responsibility for somebody else. We're all responsible for our own journey and our own life. We can't control another human being. And the more I try to control in a relationship, the more I lose the relationship. So I have to be able to stand still, look within the mirror, and work on myself as a person. You know the ironical part about this? I got that message from the doctor in 1973, but I didn't really work on that and make the changes in my life until 1985 and 1986, over 12 years later. He was right. I had to continue the journey of burning myself out, getting caught up in a couple of addictions, literally almost putting myself in the grave until I had to come to a surrender point and a wake-up point. I share that with you because I really believe deep down inside that so many of us need to be able to look into a mirror and see how special and beautiful we are and begin to realize living with myself and understanding me is the greatest of all relationships. And I truly believe this today. If you truly take the time and the effort to work on yourself, to look within your own self, then you will attract into your life the people you're supposed to share your life with. I find it so interesting because 84, 85, those years of my life, I went through a lot of therapy. I had to make very major decisions in my life. Had to face stuff, anger and stuff. I never realized how angry I was. When I began to really do this work, Then, later on, I met someone who came into my life to be my teacher. My wife today was the one who got me into my eating disorder recovery, the one who kicked my rear end and made me take a look at what I had to take a look at. And I'm grateful today. Back when I first met her, I wasn't too grateful because I thought she was very, how dare she? And yet I realize today, usually the people that love you the most are the ones that will tell the truth to you and help you on the journey. And good relationships are not easy. They really aren't. Because you have to invest in them. And that's where learning and growing and discovering comes from. And so what I want to do in this series for the next 3 weeks is really concentrate. I guarantee you the next 3 lectures will be very positive. I want to spend the time next week on working on how do I develop a healthy spiritual relationship with myself as a person. How do I come to get to know me? And then in the week after that, we'll talk about how do I take the energy of myself and share that gift with others in a positive way. And then we'll finish the series with relationships and sexuality. And I hate to tell you this, but it's not about sex. Your sexuality is your personhood. What makes you the unique individual that you are. And our interconnection, and that's a big word. There's a big difference between codependency and interdependency. Interconnection with people we're in contact with. So I hope this series is something that will help you to take a look at your own self. But the most important thing I want you to be able to look at is no matter where situations are in your life, it's never too late to look in the mirror and work on yourself as a person. Because you are the most unique and the most special person on the face of this earth. For you are the only one there is of you. And therefore, if I truly learn to love me, then the energy from me will go out to others. It's like that old saying, positive attracts positive, and negative attracts negative. And as a result, we're able to do this in a very powerful way. This helps you just understand what I refer to as unhealthy relationships. And I know it's not easy to break patterns, because one of the things that's hard to do is so many times people end up keep going back and going back and going back until they get sick and tired of being sick and tired, until they're ready to move forward. And believe me, I had to keep going back to the same behaviors and attitudes for almost 12 to 13 years before I came to my surrendering point and my awakening point. It's very painful and yet beautiful at the same time. So my prayer today is that we're able to look within our own selves and see the beautiful gift that God has created and realize our energy and our strength is who we are. So let us pray. God, we come before you today in prayer. We ask the God of our understanding, our divine presence, to be with us and guide us. Teach us that every one of us, no matter who we are, no matter where we come from, no matter what happened in the course of our journey, each one of us is unique and each one of us is special. Each one of us is exactly who we're supposed to be. Give us the strength and the learning to learn how to love who we are, to like ourselves, to celebrate ourselves, to care for the gift of ourselves. For I truly believe the more we're able to care for ourselves and grow, God has a plan for every one of us. And everything will happen when it's supposed to happen. And so I pray today to the God of my understanding to be with me, guide me, help me, and sometimes push me to take a look at what's really going on in my life. And help me, please God, to be able to answer the questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Why am I on this journey? And teach me to always, always be willing to change, to grow, to learn, to experience new ways, to be open to new ideas and new directions. And so I praise and I ask the God of my understanding to be my guide and my strength as I walk the journey of life, helping me to love who I am and be able to celebrate the people around me. I pray and I ask this, and we pray it in your name.